Hello. Today we've got Tim Sattley, Mark Finn, and Trevor Stamper joining me.
Hey
Hey guys.
Jeff.
Yeah, we are doing a clinic in our secret Facebook group, top secret. People were discussing, yeah, people were discussing issues and problems we've been having. I thought, you know what? While we're kind of going through this, you know, maybe we just troubleshoot it. Kind of like the thing I like to do. Sometimes my kids don't really appreciate is we have a problem. I like to talk about solutions.
Novel idea.
Yeah, they don't want solutions. They just want
Jeff,
somebody to
you
say it's
monster.
okay. Yeah.
God, solve a problem. What's wrong with you?
So, Tim, we'll start with you since you're left of Mary here. So,
Oh, great.
so,
Okay.
so you stated that. So you have an idea for a book of one-shot adventures, right?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of individual adventure modules at this point, right? I've got something that I've been working on, and it's, when you go to cons and you go around to different events, or as an adult gamer, one thing I've found is that it's kind of tough. It's tougher to have a campaign in the fact that you can't always get the same group of people together on a regular basis. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes people are missing. So when you've got adventures that roll out for, 3 or 4 sessions, a lot of times instead of happening in a short time frame, it takes months to get those finished. If you're going to a con, you got a 3-4 hour window to do your game, and then you need to move on, right? And so just talking with people and running into things like this, I actually created, and I mean, I'm not the first to do this, right? No, everyone has seen, micro dungeons and those types of things. But what I've done is I've got, using the DCC chassis, a specific theme, and I've got right now about 7 different adventures, all based off of the same thing. Every one of them completely different. 3 are DCC, 3 are MCC, 1 is Lankmar, 1 I could probably convert to a Dying Earth if, when that system comes out. But the problem that I have is it's going to take a lot more to fund putting together a project like this than any of the other stuff I've ever done. The individual modules, it's the cost containment and the work that's involved in it is pretty set, right? It's I've got a good grasp on that. But for me to do something like this, you're going to need artwork for each different adventure, right? You're going to need a map for each different adventure. You're going to need custom artwork for the different new monsters and encounters and things that you're including for each of those. So take that adventure module, spread it out by 7, turn it into a hard copy book, and all of a sudden it's like, is it worth I don't know if it'll be able to fund, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know, maybe I'm a little different, but I don't want to kickstart something until I'm finished with it. That's just the way I roll. I do it, it's done, it's ready to be, I throw it out there on Kickstarter, and as soon as I get funded from, Kickstarter, that they give me the list of everybody who comes through, I ship it so that way it's ready to go. And I'm just running into trouble right now trying to get my head around the finance side. Granted, I'm a finance guy, so this is, this is what I do for a living, right? So I'm looking at this and saying, the bottom line is it keeps getting put off to the back. I'm working on other stuff because I don't want to put effort into something that's never going to come to fruition.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. Let me ask you a question. So, you're working on it in fits and starts, right? Like, not all at once. When you get an idea, you write it down and then you go do something else. Is that correct?
Exactly. Like I've got 1 complete adventure done and play tested. I've got outlines for 5 others, so each at different levels of being complete.
So what do you, I'm asking this, please understand, with zero acrimony or attitude, but I'm
Gotcha.
genuinely curious. What do you think your sweat equity is worth? And at what point of even doing it in fits and starts, do you say it would be easier to throw money at this?
What do you, well, as far as like sweat equity for me, I just do this because I like it. All the
Yeah.
money go and everything that I'm doing. Matter of fact, when I look at the funding on this thing, 95% of it is artwork,
Oh, yeah.
cartography and artwork, and then the cost for printing, right? Because everything
Right.
else I've done print on demand through Drive-Through RPG, just because I have a full-time job. I have a second job that I teach. I'm doing it. So for me, this is all just kind of fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to deal with the fulfillment side and that end of it. Just because I don't have time, right? It boils down to just allocation of time as a resource. I don't care if I make money on it. I just would like it to break even so I'm not losing money. My
Right.
wife is happy if there's not negative things hitting the bank account that aren't accounted for.
I think
So
that's very reasonable. Um, well, okay, so presuming, of course, that these would all be done in kind of a uniform fashion. They're all going to be laid out similarly, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And it's going to be presented in kind of a similar style. How minimal could you do it and still feel like you were giving somebody something that was worth the money? I guess what I'm asking is, if you could do this with, say, 5 complete single issue or single episode adventures, and then kickstart it, and then depending on how much money you raise, add that 6th one, that 7th one, that 8th one, because you would have
Mhm.
enough to cover it. I mean, would that even be something you would entertain, or are you still married to the
Well,
idea of being 90 to 100% done before you hit the green button?
well, I am kind of married to the hitting it, doing that before the green button, just because I don't want to be sitting under a deadline, right? If
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, everybody works slightly different, but I I don't want to put out a Kickstarter and say it's September 2022. I'm going to deliver this in, August of 23. I want to have it, I want people, there's that satisfaction of when someone pays the money out and then they get the product, right? You've got
Sure.
it's very tactile. And so I don't like the long delays on that. But that's, like I said, that's part of my own foible. I don't want to say, here's something for next year, and yeah, I'll get it done before then. Okay, now I'm under a deadline. And for all I know, stuff could blow up at work and I can't do anything for the next 2 months besides the stuff I absolutely have to do for my regular job.
Right.
And
That
so,
being said, the costs are like the cover, the back cover, the cartography for each of the adventures. So, I mean, probably no matter what, 70% of the cost that I'm figuring is going to be there, whether it's 5 modules or 8 modules.
so let me ask you a couple questions, Tim.
Yeah.
Follow up. First of all, my first question is, what's the average length of an adventure, of one of these little adventures or episodes in terms of word count?
Okay. The way I envision it is 1 page of word count description, 1 page description, 1 page for the map, 1 page and then you've got a bestiary or bestiary, however you want to pronounce it. Your bestiary and any custom stuff that comes with it on an additional page. So that's the basic thought process behind it. So it's kind of it's an offshoot of 1 page dungeons.
Okay, so and you're talking about an 8.5 by 11 page
Yes.
setup. So that's 600 words is an average page word count for us for an 8.5 by 11 page. So the word count's not the issue.
Nope.
And you've got 6 for 24 pages, plus some art. So I guess I have a couple of things that I would suggest.
Okay.
And the first is a follow-up question. Are you married to the idea that you have to have 5, 6, 7 of these in a thing? I understand that it saves you in terms of potentially in terms of cover costs. So it's easy, it's cheaper. There's a savings there. Like you could put 2 or 3 together at a time, and that would be a Kickstarter, and that would be a Kickstarter, and that would be a Kickstarter. And building a series, by the way, of related products generally tends to grow your market and your presence and people's interest in your products. So there's one advantage there, but the disadvantage is you're maybe having to figure out new covers, or you have to come up with a cover that you could change colors on or something so that it was related but different every time. That's an entirely doable process too. And so I've certainly seen products that basically have one uniform thing, right? And they just change the color of it in a kind of Andy Warhol style presentation, right? So you've got, maybe a Tim Sattley, logo right there on the center or something, right? And a blank page otherwise, but Tim Sattley's logo is in pink, and you got a yellow background on number 1, and then it's in green, and you got a blue background on number 2. So there are ways to minimize the cost of doing multiple things. But I think coming back to Mark, he's asking a question, I think, about what's your sweat equity worth, right? Because he's thinking of return on investment. And there's been several conversations, especially on RPG Ramblings here and in RPG Zines, about return on investment in terms of how many pages should you put into a booklet to expect a decent amount of, return on that time. And so breaking things up into smaller chunks usually results in a higher return. Also becomes a cheaper product, right? Which means that also drives more interest that helps build that. So there's kind of a marketing strategy there that you could go for. So if you had, say, Tim's 3-night stand, right? A product line like that, where it's 3 different things that can be completed in 4 hours, right? If you're not married to 6 things in a 1 issue, right? You've got 2 issues worth of product there.
Gotcha.
And then what you do, just like you did for your very first one, right? You use the money from that, the profits from that, to bankroll the next one, and so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
There's definitely a way. I don't know about you guys, and I know that Jeff buys a lot of zines. I have a couple hundred now, and they don't always have complicated covers. They don't need to have complicated covers.
No, it's a real spread amongst people who literally are just in it because they had a great idea, and professionals and all points in between. And I would also, I had a thought about, I love artwork, especially if you're doing new monsters and stuff like that. I think that's such an old school thing, right? One of the coolest things about buying the old modules back in the day was there were always a few new monsters, and you got those great pictures, and so that just added to the lore of whatever you were doing. The only thing I can think of that would offset a cost on that is if you needed to do something along those lines, go back to somebody that you've worked with before, not only that you trust, but that trusts you, so that, it might be a thing where you're not comfortable, asking them to do work for free, but you're also saying, I will pay you once the Kickstarter's done. You have my word, and them being able to go, you know what, we've worked together before. I understand that, that might help to sort of determine how much art you're going to have, because you might just fund, or you might fund plus another 6,000 or 8,000. And then, what are you going to do? Obviously funding the next one is, I think, a good idea, especially for a series. I would love if you were doing 3 Lankmar, 3 Dying Earth, 3 Mutant Crawl, 3 Dungeon Crawl at a whack. That would be cool. That'd be a really...
And that, which brings up a great point, which is my thought was having some of each under the same cover. But what you're saying is, okay, look, do your DCC ones, do your MCC ones, do your other ones. I just know that, well, and Trevor, I know we had mentioned something about this before, how, MCC doesn't have the same following as DCC. and stuff like that. So would it be better to lump them all together as here's your DCC, here's your MCC, or it'd be better to do, because like Goodman will put out the thing on, free RPG day and on DCC days where it's like, okay, here's a Lankmar module and here's a, or adventure and here's an MCC adventure. And then the next one comes out and it's 2 or 3 different ones. And that's kind of the thought process I was going with.
So if I could kick in there, I think there's a couple, you have to think of your strategy. First of all, there's always an appeal from purists to get all their bang for their buck in one issue, even if it's series. So if you've got an MCC, DCC, so on and so forth, right? The MCC people just want to buy the MCC one and then they want to go on their way because they're not interested in DCC. That said, Dungeon Crawl Classics has a 10-year history now of reskinning to solve problems. And so one thing you might consider adding, just as you throwing it out there, is 2 or 3 sentences at the end of each of your adventures that say, want to run this in MCC? Here's my reskinning idea. Want to run this in Weird Frontiers? Here's a reskinning idea. Want to run this in Dying Earth? Here's the reskinning idea. And the reason I state that is twofold. First of all, it appeals to the most people, and you can state that is an advertising feature, right?
Yes.
Hey, I got 3 great adventures coming. They can be completed in 4 hours each, and they could be running DCC, MCC, Weird Frontiers, and anything you want. It's all right there for you.
Yeah.
The other thing is this. I don't know if you've spoken with the Dark Master specifically about putting out Lankmar adventure content or Dying Earth adventure content. He has the license to that, and my understanding is, after talking to him about a couple things in the past, you would need to request a license to specifically produce a Lankmarian product, right?
Gotcha.
That's a license thing.
And I was wondering about that actually, and it's made in such a way so that you can drop it into a Lankmar neighborhood, or you can drop it into a DCC village.
So this is where you check with Joseph Goodman ahead of time, and you say, is it possible to say for me to advertise this as Lankmar, or could I even just, again, back to the blurbs, could I put are you running in Lankmar? This would be great between Marsh Street and the Street of the Gods, right?
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? I mean, just where you are completely, one of the things that I like to do in Tales from the Smoking Worm is assume that my reader knows the content that we're referencing, and just say, go look this up. This is where this would sit. And they will do that, right? And in a way, that's free advertising for Joseph Goodman's products too, right? Because I'm saying you got to have this to do this. And so you need to have a conversation with him ahead of time about those things, and he'll be able to guide you on that specifically, and that'll inform where you're going, whether it's totally generic or not. That said, for instance, Fleeting Luck is a concept that was created in Lankmar that we're actually reprinting a paragraph from the Lankmar book in issue 5 of Tales from the Smoking Worm. We got specific permission to do that. It's not a Lankmar concept, it's a Goodman concept. And so that it is possible. I mean, Joseph Goodman's a great guy. You just need to have an open conversation with him and feel him out for what his limits are and what he knows you can or can't do with, and that, he'll tell you if he thinks you're going to violate a license.
Gotcha.
Okay. So sorry,
Perfect.
Did I step on anybody else's toes there?
No, not at all.
That was a ton of things, but I would definitely, in my opinion, you should not, and I don't want to insult anybody. You should hedge your bets and make sure your modules are as good as, are as useful as possible to as many people as possible. Right. There are Weird Frontiers people who, according to David Beatty, bought Weird Frontiers but have never heard of DCC. Right? So that's a market that literally doesn't exist inside the DCC community right now. But they're looking and hungry for Weird Frontiers products.
Gotcha.
Are they as numerous as DCC people? Maybe not. But, that's what it is.
Yeah, I was thinking there's a lot of ways you can handle this, and I think it comes down to what you ultimately want. So I have an idea of a traveler setting, where I've got 6 different systems, and doing a zine for each system, and have the adventures, have the corporations, have hooks, have all that stuff for each system in the zine. And then the final one would be, I would just put some, maybe put out a free zine for the people that bought it, but then combine it into a book. And then you have your book paid for. You have all the art really done, you're ready to go. So as you're going, you're segmenting as you go through it. It's funny. For my goal would be ultimately to have a completed book, but the zines would be the means to do it.
Sure.
Gotcha. So basically what you're kind of seems like what we're saying here is, instead of me with this vision of a tome of here's a bunch of one shots that you could run, break it down and do a few one shots and do a series, and then maybe at the end of it put it all together as a bigger tome.
What I would be tempted with what you're doing is do them as one adventure per zine, and make it as dirt cheap as possible, and get it, and make sure your layout's good, make sure it's readable, but try and get the price down so low. That could be a gimmick as well. This is a $3 adventure,
or even cheaper. This is something where you could tap into the Philip Reed model of, cheap PDFs, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you fund the first one. If you really want it in hardback, that's fine. I'll send you 3 pamphlets. And you're only talking about 4 to 6 pages, 8.5 or 8.5 by 11. I want to point out to you that the cost to produce those is so cheap that it's actually far cheaper for you to literally print them yourself and staple them.
Yeah.
And make them like an old school zine. I mean, you can buy, I literally have in the room next to me an electric automatic stapler that cost me $100 off eBay, that I bought a new stapler head for because they wear out over like 1 million staples. And the thing is, I put a $50 stapler head into it, and it rocks. It will saddle stitch all day, and for a couple bucks, or an hour's of time, you can put together 300 or 400 booklets. I mean, it's almost none of your time is taken up by that,
and you just embrace it.
I just recently scored an old Judges Guild Dungeoneer magazine from back in the day, and I bought it for, it was $4, and they had some reviews of some movies that I thought were interesting that have been talked about in my circles lately. So I thought that was kind of fun. But as I'm looking through, I'm realizing this is newsprint, and Judges Guild printed on newsprint forever. I mean, it's crazy to think that they spent like I'm sure this had to have been at a college campus or something, but all of their stuff for the longest time was stapled newsprint in a plastic bag, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But people, root through that stuff like it's the Dead Sea Scrolls, oh my God, look at this, and they'll buy it for one table. But I don't know how much newsprint costs, but I do know that there is a company that will make a
broadsheet.
Yeah, they'll do a single sheet that you can fold down.
Oh, really?
Tim, that is actually a really good idea, because you can buy a broadsheet that is 16 by 22, 17 by 22.
Yeah.
They cut the margins, that they will fold for you, or they'll ship it flat, and it's like pennies on the dollar if you get like 1,000 of them, right? It was not expensive. Chaosium, or not Chaosium, but the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society just took advantage of this with their Emmy award-winning compilation of props for the first 6 or 7 modules that Chaosium put out in the 80s that Chaosium just reprinted. They did a full 16-page broadsheet, and then you could literally clip art out your stuff, and they printed on the back as well, so that it had the full feel of newspaper. And so, you know, there are some creative ways to deal with it, you know.
And
You know,
I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Trevor. As we've seen in that zine group, no format is too odd. There is no such thing as a bridge too far. You know, I would not be surprised if Philip Reed's next project was tattooed onto his skin, you know, directly, and you're buying the tattoo.
And you just barcode it, right? So it's just
Yeah.
a QR code that you download. And whenever, if you ever find him in the wild, you can just QR code his shoulder. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, but now you did say that you know, your modus operandi was that you don't want to have to deal with shipping directly yourself. That's why you do print on demand, right?
In the past, yes, that's exactly what I've done. I did. Once again, it's just a allocation of time issue.
Sure. There are people, Andy Markham and others, who can ship for you. So that is at a small price. You can deal with that. Obviously, Lightning Source and everything, which I think you're doing through drive-through, right? So that's Lightning Source printers. They're shipping it out to their constituents for you, and you're I'm assuming you're recouping. Let me get this straight. You do recoup shipping, and then you pay to ship it. Is that correct?
Yes, shipping. What I've done so far is with Kickstarters, shipping is part of the overall project, so I collect on that, and then when I send it out, I prepay
all the shipping.
Drive through, I prepay the shipping, whatever the shipping charges are for everything to go out. That way, the customer gets, you know what? They get the email with the download, and then they get the email, or they get the hard copy in the mail, and they don't pay a second time.
And that's a perfectly viable and laudable way to do your business too. I mean, don't think that just because Mark and I like the idea of hand making some things, that you feel compelled you have to do that. You can literally, do these as PDFs, right? The first 2 or 3, with the idea that once you get to a booklet, then you print the booklet. And so you can do a PDF only Kickstarter.
Oh yeah. And then collect.
Right? I mean, and then in the end, collect it. So make it super cheap, right? Oh, I'm going to put out 3, modules that you get the PDF and you can print them on front and back on a piece of paper. Right. Or 2 pieces of paper. 1 piece of paper would be better. But or maybe it's on a legal size, right? And that, although I have to tell you, that becomes an odd printing size when you finally go do your book, which means it costs more money. So you could start with, I'm going to put one of these out a month, right? And get people used to the idea. And then what you do is, hey, you bought last, and I do this with Smoking Worm. I have a $5 PDF. That's the cheapest you'll ever get a Smoking Worm PDF for. But then I have a bundle that only through the Kickstarter, you get all the Smoking Worm PDFs, kind of a la Philip Reed, but not quite as cheap. And every Kickstarter I see, $1,000 in sales that are purely PDF sales. So I mean, you could start that way, do 2 issues, pay your moderate price, again, use the same piece of cover art, or not even have a cover art, right? Because it's just a PDF. You don't want to waste the time of a cover on a double-sided sheet of paper.
Yeah, you can use a banner across the top. That's what Phil's rumor PDFs were. There was a banner and a nice piece of text, and then the rest was just a nice 2-column, really pretty, cleanly laid out, but nothing fancy.
Yeah. So I mean, that way your costs are way lower, and then you've saved up the money. Put it in its own account. Call it, Tim's cool, 16 issue fund or whatever.
Oh. And 3-day bender or whatever.
Yeah, 3-day bender. That's a great Tim's 3-day benders.
There you go.
Right. And it's 3 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. They pay for, that way they're getting 3 4-hour sessions. I love the idea. That is a great title. Right. And then
Well,
in the
where-
end, you get Tim's Hole Bender, right? Like 2 weeks of 4-day modules.
Well, if I see you guys one-on-one, like maybe a game hole or something like that, I'll actually let you know what it's tied to. And everyone I've talked to has been like, I love it. So
Okay.
that's kind of where.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is a lot of times it's those limitations that allow us to be creative. And I think it's those limitations that can also, help you stand out.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need to take. I'm just trying to come up with different ways to look at it to see what can actually make this functional, as opposed to my, delusions of grandeur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always hard to get to that, speed that we want to, because it obviously does take money for art and such, but there's always ways around even that. So I found, like with Journey to Madlands, I found ways of filling up the book with images that I was able to, posterize and make work. So, there's opportunities where if you're looking for them.
Yeah.
And even that format, where it's cheaper, that may even be, your thing too. If you can produce them cheap enough, like why wouldn't somebody buy 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 of them? Why wouldn't stores want to carry them for something that's that cheap to hand out? And maybe even Goodman Games, if it's cheap enough, they'd buy a bunch of them, and who knows, maybe they would use it for promotional stuff, or hand them out at cons or whatever it may be.
Or you could always speak with Joseph about, if it's a generic enough module adventure, you could offer to, for the month of, say, October, right? It's Tim's October Bender, right? And you give out one to every customer for free. So if a customer places an order, they auto get one of Tim's free PDFs that they can choose to download or not, but it doesn't cost them any money.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a way of free marketing as well, because you're getting at customers who routinely go straight to Goodman and don't go necessarily anywhere else. So, I bet if you approached Joseph Goodman about that and said, I just want to give everybody who orders from you in the month of October a free PDF adventure, it's kind of hard to pass up that concept of I get to hand out free. Yeah. And who's going to say, it's not worth my time to download, 2 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, and maybe it'll be a good, worthwhile adventure. Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't go as low as Phil does with the $1 PDF. So I went down to $3 for Gary's appendix. But the thing to remember is when you're putting out something as a Kickstarter very cheap, you are gaining names, you're gaining customers, you're gaining. So there's a certain marketing value, or is somebody just giving you a buck?
Yeah.
Because now every time you do a Kickstarter, they're going to get notifications. Their friends are going to get notifications. So, having those price points, there may be even value just even doing a Kickstarter for something that's like you're talking about the PDFs for just a couple bucks. There's a certain future value that you're getting done that can pay dividends later on.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a lost leader, but may not be losing anything. Maybe you won't make anything, but boy howdy, if you get 100 people buying into that, all of a sudden your audience just jumped.
Yeah, and a couple of times, what's it really costing you to give out 2 pages worth of stuff, and a couple
just the time and effort I put into laying it out and writing it and putting it together, which I'm doing anyways.
Yeah, one of the things that we did, that Tales from the Smoking Worm did, which by the way solves your problem of not having a player show up in the middle of a 3 or 4 session run, is if you go to our website, we have a DCC Day special PDF that we gave out to people, and during the Cyclops Con. It was a Cyclops Con special for 2020. And it is the full rules for the use of something called a silver ball, which is a DM's fiat thing, where the silver ball comes and it gloms onto a person, absorbs them, and then spits them out later randomly in the universe, which is, by the way, a great way to move characters from one adventure to the next. But in true DCC fashion, it changes them, right? They either come out having done something they don't remember, or like they wake up and they get spit out by the silver ball and they have a tattoo on their back of a map that they don't know, that they have no idea why it's there. And so there's 2 or 3 D30 tables that subtly alter the character, sort of not as a penalty, but as as an enticement for maybe showing up to the session on a regular basis. That may not, we've had people who show up and they're all blue after that, so.
And then they look down their back at the tattoo and go, when the hell did I back Philip Reed's Kickstarter?
That's right. So I mean, the Cyclops cons, there will be another Cyclops con in May. And so that gives you time to plan. And it would be great, Tim, I mean, this is something that you and I could talk to the other DCC, MCC, Weird Frontiers type of people and say, we'd love to put together a PDF packet, right? That is, here's a little snapshot of all of our work, and just give that to everybody who shows up to the con, right? So again, another little marketing idea. So, and having 1 or 2 of your little adventures, people read those, they try them out because, they're hard up on a Thursday night because they haven't had time to work out all of the, nuances of their game, but they've got a game tomorrow. And
a Cyclops con zine is a great idea.
Yeah.
Then that's really special. I love it. I used to do it back in the day. Whenever I got the chance, I'd contribute. I love it when conventions will give you something unique to the con, whether it's a fiction book or a zine or a magazine or, whatever it is. That's always a cool thing. That would be a hell of an attention getter.
Yeah. So.
Great ideas. I appreciate it.
Idea. Yeah, it definitely is many ways of looking at it. That's what's kind of nice to have a variety of people kind of look at these issues, because we all kind of come at from different experiences and different angles. But so Mark, your problem is too many projects, not enough time. Is that
once again a day that ends in Y?
I had it all worked out, man. It was just perfect. And then for my sins, I'm working with 5e, and so I got, let's not call it scuppered, but the product that they're working on for their winter release kind of takes a shot across my bow. So I had to kind of think it through and decide, am I going to pass or am I going to play? And I've decided to play. The thing that just funded for Zine Quest 4 was called Ogres 11. And it was system neutral heists that are for your fantasy game. No stats, just here's the setup. And you can drop them in and stat them yourself and go to town. And it funded better than any of the other things that I've done. It's been nice to see. I've had a gradual stair step up with each project. So more money and more people bought into this than anything else, which is fine. It's based on a product that I came out with last month called Tools of the Trade. This is system neutral heist generator. It's got tables and literally builds a fantasy heist for you in less than 5 minutes. You flesh it out. It takes about 10-15 minutes to put a heist together, but you can literally do it almost on the fly. It's a thing I've been working on for forever. I've been playing with this concept for over 20 years, and I got to do like a really public version of it in the Modifius Conan 2D20 game that came out. I was one of the writers on Conan the Thief, and I included a Hyborian age heist generator for that Conan game. And I'm very proud of it. Most people that have reviewed it have said that's their favorite thing in the book. So I know that, so in terms of proof of concept, I know that it works. I've play tested it extensively. And so my plan was to do this, get this out, now in a anybody can do it sort of format, and then follow it up with a 5e splat book that shows you how to basically turn Dungeons and Dragons into a World of Thieves kind of a world. And so that was called Polite Society. And I've been talking about it for a while now. I mentioned it in passing. It feels like all the time, but I know that's not the case. So when they made the announcement, and so what I told people, the log line, the selling point that I have used for so many people on Twitter, in Facebook, and everywhere is, it's like the Fellowship of the Rings meets Ocean's 11. Instead of going to destroy the ring, they're going to steal it. And so everybody goes, okay. Oh, that's really cool. Well, Chris, whatever his last name is, that's the lead, the creative designer for 5th edition, kind of laughingly said, it's like Ocean's 11 meets Dungeons and Dragons, and it's all going to be a lot of one night single session heist that players can just sort of drop into any existing campaign. And I thought, oh boy. So my timeline, which is about 3 years long, has now exponentially shortened. I think I've got a way to do it that works, that's going to work. But it's going to be crackerjack timing. I'm going to have to basically start another Kickstarter in October for Polite Society. The intention is that it will not come out until the end of 2023. And I'm going to tell people that up front. The game itself is about 75% written, and I'll have a downloadable preview that you can take a look at it. And I've decided that because I'm not going to have the time to do what you're talking about, Tim, which is where you buy stuff in advance and build things up and make it look good. I'm going to basically do a Kevin Crawford style. Here's a very stripped down, streamlined book. It's everything you need. It's playable. There will be some artwork. There will be some maps. It will be laid out professionally to look nice, but it's not going to have a lot of bells and whistles. And I'm going to distribute it through DriveThruRPG and PDF and softcover form, and that's it. I'm doing it to get it out because I have the advantage of there's about to be a lot of material. There's about to be a lot of money spent on the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which is about thieves pulling a heist.
That's
and
why
there's,
I think it's a tie-in.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I can't advertise. I can live in their backstream, I can do a lot of slipstreaming off of that. And so it's really it's a now or never, I feel, kind of, not never, but I won't get a better chance.
So you just plan on doing one big book? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Ogre's 11 is still going to come out. It'll ship in January, right before.
Right. But for 2023, what do you plan for 2023? Just a single book?
For Zine Quest 5? Zine Quest 5 is going to be a support zine for Polite Society.
Okay.
So the way it'll be set up is you're going to have to trust me that I have sent you all of these zines on time and I'm not going anywhere. But, my plan is to get Polite Society out, and then the very next month, that first of the quarterly zines shows up with extra stuff, bonus content. Here's some reviews of the books that Mark recommended in the back of the catalog. Here's a thing I didn't have here's a little extra, some equipment that didn't make it into the book, whatever the things are going to be, those are going to be really like actual zines.
So
they'll have reviews.
And Polite Society is coming out. The Kickstarter you're saying is in October.
It's in October. Society. I'm kickstarting it, and it'll drop in December of 2023.
You're saying, that you're saying it'll take you're planning on having it produced in a year.
Yes.
But then you're having a zine supporting Polite Society out.
That drops in January 2024.
Oh, in 2024.
So that's all the follow-up stuff.
Yep. So look.
Sorry to interrupt there, Mark.
No, it's okay.
Can I tell you a really interesting story?
I would love to hear it.
First of all, I'd like to tell you that I listened to your RPG Rambling with with Jeff and went and bought Tools of the Trade.
Oh.
And read it and love it. And my plan is to actually use. It's probably going to take a little converting. I don't know. I'm going to try it just straight out of the box with Lankmar for DCC.
Yes,
and I was thinking the same thing. That is a perfect Lankmar.
It actually it is, Tim. Yeah, it's an absolute. And I've been working on some not thieving stuff, but other types of how do you build, this type of a scenario, like a forensics mystery or something like this.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? And how can you just, I've got several projects where it's like, here you want this type of environmental encounter, but I can't just give you 3 of them. That's, I'd rather give you a whole bunch of tables and let you generate an infinite variety of them.
Right.
And this actually ties in with my conundrum, which I'm sure we'll get to next. Follow up to the Tools of the Trade is great. I downloaded the Feather Thief and listened to that on the way back from a trip that I did on a bookbinding trip.
Oh, cool.
Because I'm a forensics guy anyway, and a natural historian. My PhD is in biology.
Well, that's all in your wheelhouse, man. Yeah.
Well, and so as a matter of fact, for most of my master's work, I worked on feather identification, and under an ornithologist and everything. And so I had actually not heard of that. It is a fascinating read.
Cool. I'm glad you liked it.
It was great. So thank you for the 7 hours of distraction while I drove home.
Absolutely. Happy to do it, man.
But my story, to get to the point, my story is, let me tell you about this great WotC product called Spelljammer. Okay. And how it does not live up to itself.
Yeah.
And I have it, and it is not the only version of that, right? 2nd edition Spelljammer is a completely different animal than 5th edition Spelljammer. And for those of you who may or may not be Spelljammer fans, if you were a Spelljammer 2nd edition fan, you're probably going to be unhappy with the 5th edition version, which but there is a history of this type of product, not being too safe.
Mm-hmm.
And by the court, and it's not just WotC, it was or Hasbro under WotC. It was WotC itself with their city generator written by Mike Mearls. The Fantasy Flight version was infinitely better,
right?
Versus the one written by Mike Mearls for WotC, which was tame and had no guts to it.
Yeah.
Right. And so my bet is that you want to get into that, hey, let me tell you about a heist, but I don't think you're going to have any competition from WotC.
It's funny. You're not the only one that's mentioned that. And I kind of, it's struck me as, I don't want to throw any shade on them because, they're a good company and they try very hard. And I know there's some really talented people working there, but there has not been a hardcover, either a redo of something like Saltmarsh or a new thing like Dragon Heist, that didn't immediately show up that there weren't a horde of ancillary products popping up around it, like right in its wake of here's how to fix it.
Yes.
Here's some, you know what I mean? And it runs the gamut from here's a D100 table for trinkets for Dragon Heist to a guy who's done a series of here's how to properly structure these adventures so that they make more sense.
Yeah.
And so not knowing any of these people personally and not wanting to come off as a snot-nosed ingrate, I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anybody in that group that thinks they can out heist me.
Yeah.
If you haven't read all of the Parker novels by Richard Stark, if you haven't read all the Dortmunders, if you haven't spent countless hours doing deep dives into all this stuff, that's been the reason why I wanted to do the heist game 20 years ago, was that no one's done it right. They'll say, hey, here's how to, this is a heist. Here's the bar, here's the guys, here's where they're stationed. When the players kick down the door, they should all be right here. And I go, that's not heist. That's any urban adventure. They're always gonna kick down the door. You got to tell them why they can't just kick down the door. And so I tried to redo it, and I think hopefully Tools of the Trade shows there's a procedure, as to why you would want to do it a different way. But I am almost 100% certain in my heart that will be absent from this product that's going to come out in the winter of this year, this Key to the Golden Palace thing. So yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of work, and I'm just gonna have to keep my nose down and give probably a weekly report so people know, that I haven't fled Mexico to get matching tattoos or whatever. But yeah, I think I can. I may not be able to get it in production values. There's no way I can compete with the art team and the graphics design department, but I think I can do it with the content. So anyways.
Well, one thing, make sure that you put at the end your own personal appendix H, your appendix of all the heist modules.
I did.
Or heist books that you read.
Tools of the Trade has a, I think, an abbreviated version.
Just like it, but instead of appendix N, it's your appendix H.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So how many words or how many pages do you think this is going to be, Mark?
The Tools of the Trade, well, this is going to be embedded in the book. It'll be tweaked to be more 5e friendly. A lot of this stuff in here is intentionally vague because I don't know what you call a wizard in the game you're playing, right? But when I go back through this generator, I'll put back in sorcerer, warlock, artificer, etc. I'm envisioning 75,000-80,000 words. A lot of what the heavy lifting is going to be backgrounds for the player classes, and then new archetypes for almost, I think actually every single one of the existing character classes. There's going to be a new archetype to go.
You may want to, if you haven't been, I think with 1D&D, I enjoy more following the controversy and the opinions. But one thing it does sound like they're doing well with this new version is retooling the backgrounds, and you may want to pay close attention to how that's going to work in the future, because that could be.
I took a look at that, and then I saw what their timeline was, and I think that my product is going to benefit better from a focus in, because I'm simulating genre with this in a way that basic D&D which is kind of generic fantasy. They're trying to sort of open it up to let anybody be anything, and I'm saying, hey, we're playing in a world of thieves, so these backgrounds are going to be the ones that you want to focus in on, because it's going to simulate that genre.
Well, what I understand they're doing, they're having like the individual components being floating and out there,
right?
And then they're saying, but for these types of archetypes, these are the suggestions, and so that people can tailor make it. But I'm just saying is it might also, I know we're still a ways off from that, but it does sound like people do seem to like to where they're going with that aspect.
Sure. And certainly there won't be a won't say that you can't do that, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in there as examples of, you're going to need some of this stuff to make the thieves work, So,
Yeah.
and also we're a year out. I'll have this done before one comes out. I don't know how many people are going to leave 5e personally. My money is on D&D 1 getting getting some of the younger kids, but I think most of the older folks that settled with 5 and said, okay, we're happy, don't mess this up, I think they're going to stay right where they are. I could be wrong, obviously, but yeah, I'm not gonna retool. I thought about that too, and
I think everybody that buys TSR modules will convert, because there will be compatibility, but they're going to nerf the previous editions classes.
Right.
I'll tell you, one of the things I actually find really interesting about your whole heist series is I've always been of the belief and feeling that the thief class is too generic, because there's so many different types of thieves. Are you a con man? Are you are you and when you look at a heist, you're pulling all these different archetypes of different types of thieves that need to come together for this. And there's no way right now to play, unless you just do it as straight role playing. There's no way to really do a thief that is a specific type. This one is a cat burglar versus this one is something, so that's the thing that really kind of gets me jazzed about the whole heist thought process, is that you can do that and create those from it. And I think that's actually one of the big strengths of it. Yeah,
that's part, another thing that the backgrounds are going to do. There's going to the charlatan class that they came up with for the backgrounds is it's not generic, but it tries to do too much heavy lifting. It tries to be every like con man, and it kind of fails. And so I broke that up into 3 different backgrounds: the gambler, the mummer, and the grifter. And so with backgrounds, that's the other thing, Jeff, that they're doing is they're letting you now put stat bonuses in on the backgrounds.
Yeah.
And instead of these little like role-playing things, they're kind of feats. My background things are they're not featy, but they have more thief-like advantages to them. So I think anybody that looks at it and says, I can convert this into D&D 1 will not have any problem with it. I don't think my stuff's going to be the issue. I think it'll be the other way around. They're going to have to figure out how to make their stuff work. So
other thing that, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
One other thing that really kind of stuck, I think someone who did it well, was when you read through Lankmar and they talk about the background of where you came from, your Doom and your Benison, so basically what good thing do you have going for you? What bad thing do you have going for you? And that really, what I've found is that when you actually play those, it adds a ton of flavor to the individual character. Yes. And so and it sounds like, is that the way you're leaning when it comes to backgrounds, doing something similar?
Yeah, there's going to be, you'll have, there will always be, you got baggage with you. You're either, you either owe somebody a gambling debt, and you've got to, you're doing this so you can help pay it off and keep them from breaking your family's legs, or you've got, you cheated somebody and they never forgot it, and in fact they've swore vengeance. That is the stuff that pops up later in the middle of the heist. When it's the most inconvenient time to have somebody from your past show up. That's every good it's every Steven Soderbergh heist movie that he's made, but it's also, it's a classic of the genre, and
it's a
so
level.
all this stuff is basically, is this something that I would have seen in a Donald Westlake novel? Yes. Okay. Or a Gregory McDonald Fletch book, okay, then yes, that's what we're gonna, move off of. So and of course, and as soon as I did this, my buddy Bill Willingham, who was one of the first play testers of this, said, okay, now when are you going to do it for modern days? Because I really want to play Parker. Oh, geez. Can Parker be a dragon?
Yeah.
or a beholder? Something, man. So that, but my problem is going to be the timing. It's going to be the crackerjack timing of this, and making sure that I stay ahead and meet my schedules and my deadlines. I don't think that I'm going to have a problem with that, since so much of what I've been working on has been working towards polite society anyway. So getting it into the book is going to be essentially a layout issue, and not I've got to write 3 sections. But my other problem is I'm now asking people to take a chance on me, and I don't have the credentials in the gaming world that other people do.
So can I give you a suggestion on that?
Absolutely.
So when Wolfgang Bauer struck out from WotC, went on his own, he created something called Open Design, and Empire of the Ghouls originally came out of that. The Mountain of the Stone, or the Dwarven Stone King Mountain, or whatever, came out of that. There were several 6 Arabian Nights, not the 7, but the 6 Arabian Tales came out of that. He had a whole bunch of things that came out under this concept called Open Design. And the way Open Design worked was you kicked in money. You could kick in a couple different levels of money. This should sound familiar. And I mean, some of these, to get a hardback of the original Empire of the Ghouls, I think I paid $150 to get involved. And so you were going to get the hardback at the end, but he had an Open Design website. And I'm not saying you have to get your own website, that you logged into whenever you wanted to. And he had an ongoing weekly dialogue with his players. And one of the things that happened when Wolfgang Bauer, Cobbled Press and everything went to Kickstarter, was that Open Design process got lost. And I have to tell you, I participated in probably 3 or 4 of those Open Design systems, projects. And they were some of the most satisfying conversations I ever had with players. He would lay out, here's chapter 3, and it has to deal with, it's like Halls of the Mountain King, I think was the one, if I remember correct. And he was like, this is it. And he would lay out the module for you to look at. And then he would say, but I'm having a problem here. I'd like to have this cool kind of like, Hearthguard, Dwarven ancestor type of thing here. What do you guys think? What could we come up with? And literally, I threw out a template. I was like, here is the ancestor, this is our deceased Hearthguard dwarf. They turn to stone. They, as they die, they dedicate themselves to the dwarven family, to the canton, and they're basically standing as a stone statue until, an alarm goes off, and then they activate. And so, that got published, right? My template got published in Empire of the Halls of the Mountain King, or whatever it was. And so, but those interactions were great, because you could just throw that up there and say, here's my idea. And people would interact almost like a Facebook group, right? And as a matter of fact, that's where maybe having people buy in. And, for a while, for Tales of Smoking Worm, we had Facebook group level support where you could buy in and get access to this. We have a secret Facebook group where, all of the Smoking Worm stuff gets discussed, and art gets posted, and concepts get put up there, and I ask polls, and we don't have as many conversations now as we used to. And all of those people's support levels have died out. We were pretty heavy for about a year, and then we've kind of phased that out, and I no longer have it as a Kickstarter level. But this is your opportunity to take your product, which you say you have kind of 70% written, and put up chapters every month and break it down into weekly conversations with your players, and let them tear it apart and help you make it better. Because those Wolfgang Bauer projects were infinitely better by the time they left the groupthink concepts and everything, and people throwing out ideas. And by the way, some of his most successful writing staff started as Open Design supporters, right? So if you look at his top 3 or 4 stable of writers, those people were originally people who wanted to get involved with Open Design as supporters, and now they write full-time for him.
That's a fantastic idea.
So take that.
Go ahead. What you're saying, and I think I may add a little something different, but like, why kickstart now? Why not do like what Trevor's saying, get your community going, get things going. Then when you get it more developed, then run your Kickstarter in August or October.
Well, I have been vamping for this for a while now, and I have even put a lot of stuff out in other places to show people like, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is the thing. The Dungeons and Dragons movie is going to be the spring break film, right? So it comes out the first weekend in March. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, the anticipation leading up to it is going to be the biggest factor of time when I'm going to be able to have that conversation freely and generously with pretty much anyone with even a passing interest, because that trailer, the ad campaign materials for it, this hardcover book in the winter of 2023, whatever winter means to them. I think it has to do with when the boat gets back from China with the stuff on it as to when winter happens. But you know, all of those things are going to be sort of at a kind of a choke point somewhere between November and probably January or February. And so
of January and February of
of
2023.
next year. Yeah. That's going to be really the biggest time to bang the drum, to get people interested, to,
but you're going to have your Kickstarter before that though.
I need to have it in October so that I can
so you're launching your Kickstarter before
they
launch here, so you're really losing out on all that hoopla. What you're saying you're looking for.
I think there's a better solution.
Okay.
I think you kickstart your project twice.
Oh,
I think you kickstarted in October for a buy-in to an open design type process where you throw out an Ogres 11, once a month you give them a free heist.
Yes,
right?
Yes,
that they only get through that Kickstarter and will never be supported again. And then when you're done with it, you Kickstarted a second time for the people at a higher price, right? For the rest of the people who didn't get involved.
Wow. I'm writing this down.
Well, and that's the thing is, if the movie and all this other stuff is going to generate all of this wind, you want your sale up at that same time so that you can take advantage of it, because that's what's going to get you the best bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So you need to hit that window.
Yeah. So Trevor, let me make sure I understand. The Kickstarter would be an open design thing. We're going to have a Facebook group. I'm going to post regular chapters up for y'all to look at and kick around. Once a month, as a thank you, everybody gets a free heist that will not be available anywhere else.
Nope. And you give it out as a PDF.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is it. I will never reprint this heist. This is you're going to get a year's worth of heists, right? You're going to get an Ogres 11, right, for free,
right,
every year. For once a month, and you're going to get to contribute and in discussion form and help you refine those concepts. Maybe they get to. And one of the things that Bauer had also was he had active playtesting groups, right? And so this is where he refined his playtesting style. And everything as well. And so you could tell them those heists could be the play tests.
You know, another thing too is I'm personally a guy who loves the random tables, where you throw and try and generate it and stuff. You could actually use your tools of the trade generator to create the heists and use them as examples to show people how to use that tool to here's the heist that we created using tools of the trade. And
I'm kind of way ahead of you on that.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And then
do-
do
a video.
make it a little more funky, throw a little extra stuff in there, but you know what? Now you're back promoting your tools of the trade as well as front loading for the new one that's coming out.
Yeah,
Right.
that I actually had planned on doing a video that I was going to put with the Kickstarter that was going to be just me rolling in real time and talking through the results to show you how the heist can come together.
But you do one of those every month, and they go on YouTube, and you post them all over the place, and that's your and then they're linked to each other.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're really just taking and turning that free product that's the open design product into also a marketing product for the next thing, not only for tools of the trade, right, but also for the second Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is when you I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I would say it sounds like, Trevor, you're trying to do is use Kickstarter in a way like the Patreon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like a I've been, this is something I've been working with myself for a while, is I would love to have Tales from the Smoking Worm as a subscription, where like in January, I run a Kickstarter, everybody subscribes for a year. I say, you're going to get 4 issues, right? And then, work them through that. I mean, you could do that in Patreon too, but I don't think Patreon doesn't get the walkthrough. It doesn't get the attention that Kickstarter does. And then once the subscription's going, there's less desire to buy into it, right? Because I mean, what you really need is, I need those fixed numbers in advance, so I have a budget that I'm working with.
Well, you already have a list of people that have bought, and so you could actually just email them separately saying, this is what I'm doing, and do a pre-order.
I could, right? And so you could work all that through PayPal, for instance.
Right.
But that takes a lot of manpower and time. And this isn't the problem that I came on the show with.
It's a rambling problem.
It's a rambling problem, right? How I wish I could make. I mean, Goodman Games did a subscription on their Kickstarter for Tales from the Magician's Skull, right? The second time they ran that Kickstarter, and everything. So, I think there's more to it, Mark. That second Kickstarter needs to be special in some way too.
Yeah.
And maybe you have a tier for previous Kickstarter supporters where they finally get their print version of those heists or something, right?
Right.
But I mean, but having that double Kickstarter might. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying we've solved every problem for it. I'm saying.
Yeah. No, it's a hell of an idea, though.
It also fits in what Tim's problem was too.
Yeah,
you can do a subscription.
There you go.
I'm doing something every.
Yeah, then I got to do
2
something
months.
every week though, and right now it fits into my schedule because I could do stuff anywhere, anytime when I'm.
He was trying to avoid having deadlines.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, we better get to Trevor because it's getting
yes.
It's getting. So what's your conundrum, Trevor?
So here's my conundrum. So I have a series of products. The first one is done. It's written. It's in art design. This is a product that I'm paying for off of proceeds from other products, sort of Tim style. I've got this. It's a series of products called Sandbox Set Pieces. Okay. I can write adventures. Obviously I've run adventures for years. I don't like pre-published adventures. I like to tear them apart and rebuild them.
Right.
But I've never been a big fan. What I want a really, really, really well-designed temple, right? Or a really well-designed something. So the first Sandbox set piece is House of the Petrified Frog. It's essentially a one-room dungeon that is, kind of Tomb of Horror style. It is trapped all to high heaven. It has a very specific setup, but it could be used in many different ways, right? And I have a preamble that leads into that. It actually gives you 7 different ways you could work it into an existing campaign, but it also leaves it open. There is no plot tied into specific things in the rooms, right? So it's not like you're going on an adventure and, I'm finding, the pen that I need to write the magic quill that I need to, you know, seduce the griffin to get the griffin toe. So I, you know, there's none of that. There's nothing. It's a sandbox set piece. It's a place you want to go to. And that's the idea for the product line. Now, the first one, House of the Petrified Frog, like I said, is done. We're in art development right now. I expect this to be, that'll probably be a little mini box set all by itself. But I have a couple of products that I've been working on that cross over. And right now, just to preamble, in case nobody knows this, or I'm working within the DCC Goodman Games sphere, like Tim. Right. And so I've been looking for a product line or a series of products that would cross over into DCC, cross over into MCC, and have lots of permutations and possibilities. Right. And so what I have settled on for these two very large projects that I'm working on is 6x9 4-ring binders, kind of like Monstrous Compendium style second edition setup.
Wow.
Where I give you a map. This is a major set piece, right? I can't tell you what the set pieces are. I can tell you that they exist in the real world today, right? And they're massive and they're important and they're critical and they would be awesome in MCC. They would be awesome as like portals into DCC. But the idea is that every room could be swapped for alternate versions of those rooms, and you would literally hand assemble your version of the dungeon for that location in a binder, right? So you could have the Thundar the Barbarian high wizardry type of version of this room, and then you could have the radiation rad zoned out version of the next room, and things, and then you could have a DCC warped thing in the next room, right?
Wow.
And then that would all connect together. And I know that probably sounds insane, but with the set pieces that we have in mind, it actually works really cool. And the nice thing about these set pieces is they exist multiples in the landscape. And so you could literally do a point crawl or a hex crawl where you routinely encounter these things, right? And so then because you have different permutations, you could rebuild them every time and use essentially the exact same basic map, and it would be different every time you loaded it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a ziggurat that could be used for Weird Frontiers because it's some Peruvian thing that you're down there. It could be post-apocalyptic or whatever, and then you could just run it straight one way, run it straight another way, run it straight another way, and then you could mix and match later on. Or
That's
you
right.
could just say, I'm just going to go ahead and do the Dungeon Crawl Classics with my Mutant Crawl Classics, but instead of mutant, it's just going to be regular monsters.
Reality,
you want to do it.
Yeah, reality warps, and each room is in a different.
Well, it doesn't have to be
warp
reality
space.
warps. It could just be a different pyramid.
Yeah, it could be the one next door, right? The one down the street or 20 miles away or whatever.
Cool.
And so the other idea is because I have created this system where you can swap out rooms, I could literally build it, set up a license like Weird Frontiers has, and Tim could write his version of those rooms, and they could go right into the 3-ring binder, and then they could be sorted as well. So if other creators wanted to get on board, whether it's now or later, they could literally do their own version of that product with only needing to do the stripped down small stuff, not needing to do the binder, not needing to do the big maps, not needing to do all that stuff. They would literally be able to pick up that template and say, okay, here is room 2A. Here is room 3B. Here is room 4C. And that one happens to have, a type 4 demon in it. And, it has this whole theme, right? And so the idea is, but here's the problem. 3-ring binder or 4-ring binder projects typically fail.
Yeah.
Right. Monstrous Compendium failed. That was a straight up TSR, failure to understand the parameters of their product line,
right,
and literally publishing 2 monsters on the same piece of paper. So you couldn't alphabetize your Monstrous Compendiums. And I have every single one they've ever published. Plus I have all the Mayfair Games versions. because Mayfair Games was doing the same thing with all the demons and devils so that they could insert right into your D&D second edition products, right? And so, I mean, but it's a phenomenal idea. And so the idea is that you would have the binder. This is something, binders are expensive, but I found a way to make them cheap and still high quality. It requires an investment ahead of time on my part and everything. And so I'm in the conundrum of, is the binder the best idea? To me, it is, for the mix and match ability of, I want to be able to show up with exactly what I need for this location as a GM. But is it a good, is it something that people will buy into? It's a more expensive version than buying a couple of soft cover books, right?
Right.
Are you seeing the problems that I'm set with on this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
but
you've got a big logistical retool happening that's using non-standard equipment, supplies, procedures, and everything. And you've got to lay it out in advance and then go, now I want you to buy it. I mean, that's a big ask. That's a huge ask.
I
Right.
will say though, I feel Trapper Keeper more than 3-ring binder.
I do like the idea of people just going down and buying Trapper Keepers, but I also like,
especially if you give them a piece of artwork that they can shove in the front pocket there.
they don't have pockets like that. Trapper Keepers are sealed all the way around.
I thought you could go in on it's got the plastic, or they've got that plastic thing on the outside. You could actually slit the top of it.
You could slit the top of it. So we could run a low jack video on how to low jack your Trapper Keeper and make it usable for this system.
Exactly.
I mean, so DCC people and Goodman Games folks in general love the idea of the Trapper Keeper and everything. I'm not. I mean, they do. I mean, I've seen several things on.
That's their aesthetic.
There is an aesthetic of the '80s and the Trapper Keeper and everything.
That's what we grew up with.
That's what we grew up with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I totally get that. And so and I used to use paper bags to cover all my books, and then I would scribble all over them and everything. And frankly, I still have those in a filing cabinet. The covers, right? So those things obviously meant something to me when I did them. I'm looking for a smaller package though. I'm not a big fan of the 8.5 by 11 format. I like something smaller. Doesn't mean it doesn't have to have scope, but that's why I've been looking at this 6 by 9 size.
Can I ask you, how are you wanting to are these elements that are these swappable elements, are they going to be printed on cardstock, or
they'll be on a high end, for my versions, they will be on a higher end paper that is heavier weight so that they can withstand tearing and stuff, right? That was another flaw of the original Monsters Compendium, is TSR put them out on a fairly cheap paper.
Yeah.
And so they didn't last. And it's also a problem of 3 rings versus say 4 rings, right? It turns out the more rings you have, the less wear and tear they take. Right. And so that's why you have like a lot of personal planners or 6-ring binders.
Yeah. Yes.
And so the binder mechanism that I'm currently focusing on is a 4-ring binder, 6 by 9, matte black. So it's got a different look.
Almost like the Trapper or the personal oh god, what were they? I used to have back in the day. The Stephen Covey put out the for your calendars.
That's
your
exactly right.
Timers.
Yeah,
and there would be no problem with actually creating a near like Trapper Keeper wraparound with a magnet. That would take me a little more effort. My idea was a half clamshell case, so you would have supports at the edges so it would fit more like a book and less like a binder in that V. You would give you room to kind of cushion the papers from getting damaged. And it has another benefit in that I can do different variant covers and stuff. There's a specific line of covers that I'm using that I really want to do to mimic real world products. I have a little fly, a fruit fly, that is walking over my camera. I have flies all throughout the house,
You
but
could
usually they're contained. So I don't know where this one came from.
Are you living in
for this,
Amityville?
Yeah.
Get out.
So
I
the
would
idea.
almost,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was
no,
just gonna say, I would almost think, just like they did with those daytimers, where you bought the cover as a completely separate product from the material that went inside. You know, and you would buy a new every year. You would buy a new insert for the next year that comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like you need to do it on two separate things, and it also that allows those people who are cheap and don't want to get that the cover, just, hey, I want the material, I'll put it in my own book, or I'll keep it in a folder or whatever, so that they can, you know, access it as well, as opposed to the person who wants to shell out big bucks for the whole thing.
And I don't think we're talking about huge dollars, right? I mean,
No, I know.
Yeah,
But
I
you
mean,
know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right. I mean, I do think that, you know, I'm looking at an 1.5 inch deep D-ring binder, so you can probably fit 3 or 4 variants of each room. And one of the things I would do for a room is they would not. So this is where it gets a little more complicated sometimes. If a room required more than a 2-page spread, right, more than a single piece of paper folded over, I might even saddle stitch that, so it's its own booklet, right, so that the room is contained. So it's not a whole bunch of loose leaf papers you could lose. If you were going to lose it, you'd lose the whole thing, not just like page 3. Does that make sense? Which would be a pain. That would be horrible. And the advantage is there are actually some new Canon printers called the Maxis line or something like this. They're actually ink 600 DPI inkjet ink tub printers, right? So they are meant to be refilled. They don't have cartridges. They literally have what looks like water bottles that you just dump in.
Yep.
And there are high chroma variants of those already. And this paper, these printers can take up to 4-foot pages. They can actually run through 11.5 by 4-foot sheets of paper, and they've got opening, so you can actually print these out and get quite a bit of bang for your buck out of them.
So you're talking about this as a commercial printer, correct?
As a low end commercial printer, because
Yeah.
you look at Mixam. Mixam is printing on a high end, those Indigo printers, the Indigo 7600s and everything.
Yeah.
Those printers are 300 DPI inkjet printers. Now they may be big machines, but the actual print head is no better in most respects than a 600 DPI Canon.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And so the question becomes, when you're dealing with some of these smaller things, it is literally cheaper to buy the machine and print it yourself and then pay yourself for the labor.
Yeah.
Than it is, because like Tim said, the printing costs are expensive, right? As we all know. If you know an average smoking worm, to get 350 copies printed on Rizzo, which is a high-end print system, right, is $2,500.
Jeez.
Right. And now, my backers already paid that. If I can print it with the same or better quality and, pay myself the labor,
then
you do your own assemblage.
And I do my own assemblage, right?
Yeah.
That becomes, because unlike Tim, I don't have an academic job or a financial job outside of this. This has become my job. So it's worth my time to take the time to manufacture my own products. It allows me to have ultimate quality control over a product. We've seen some Mixam disasters on the RPG Zines group.
Right.
Right. And if I'm not happy with it, I just scrap it and start over.
Right.
And so, those things are important to me, making sure that, when I got a stack of products just sitting off the camera that I've been working on. When a person gets it, my backer, I want them to be eminently happy with the product they got.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so, Tim has that. I want him to get it right away. It's almost like a shopping experience, which is a great idea. And, if I could do that, I would. I'm like, I want them, like an Apple product, I want them to open it and go, oh, wow, this is awesome. Right.
Now, But I would have, going back to the binder, is, do you think that there would be enough people wanting the value of being able to switch rooms around? Like, it's a neat concept, but do you think there's enough people say, yeah, that's a feature I didn't realize I needed?
So in the DCC scene, not zine, scene, I see lots of con plays where people are always like, I'd really like to play, the Court of Chaos, which is frankly a 20 or 30 hour module, but I need to make it 3.5 hours long because that's the normal zine slot, scenes, con slot.
Yeah.
And so here you could literally narrow it down to exactly what you feel you want to do, right? I do think that there is a lot of interest in replayability, especially in the DCC community, where that gives some interesting variation for the judge as well as the players. I have run some of these intro modules for DCC. I've run 20 or 30 times, and often many of your con DMs have run them hundreds of times. So from a campaign perspective, it makes a really awesome concept as a sandbox set piece, something that you could encounter again and again. That's got huge replay factor, right? And I could see someone building a campaign around a simple, a single concept, and hex crawling across the surface of the what is it again, Tim? The Earth in MCC. It's
Terra
AD.
Yeah.
Terra, crawling across Terra AD is explorers and exploring the same thing again and again, but hitting variations every time that the player that the judge doesn't have to do too much thinking about, right?
And you could also create recipes.
Absolutely, right? Oh yeah. Think of it. It's like suddenly that becomes like Jolly Ranchers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Jelly Bellies, right? Try A3 and blah 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 blah. Yeah, here's that, and everything. So,
well, essentially, we're both looking at the same. I don't know if I'd call it a problem, but the same thing, or solving the same solution, which is how to take something that's like a big campaign and turn it into a bite-sized module for cons or for individual single night play. But you're going the route of saying, here's a universal system that I could take and do it as a one piece that's repeatable, or you can take this and add these to it and create a campaign and something that's long-term.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you're on the right track. And I think going modular in it, and when I say modular, I'm still thinking of the day planner. I remember going into the day planner store and it was, here's calendars, here's note pages, here's this, here's that. And I put together the date planner that I needed to use. And then I would go in the next quarter and buy different fills to put in based on what was going on. And I almost kind of see what you're doing is a similar thing, where here you're buying the cover, the day timer, and then you're buying the fill-in pieces separately.
Right. Yeah. And it's something that also has repeat Kickstarter aspects. So we could go back as we come up with ideas and invite guests to come in and do their take on some of the rooms. You could do interesting, variants later on as they come up, right? I'm not on the hook to create 12 variants for every room in the beginning, right? If I had, 2 or 3 or 4, that's enough to get you started. And then judges could do their own, right? Oh, I really want to take room 2A and I want that to be unique to me. And they only have to design the room, right? And so there's a whole bunch of, or like I said, if Tim's like, this is a great idea, here's my version of this thing to add into the mix, license it out so other people can use it, right? Yeah. Because then that just supports the central sandbox set piece.
Well, but I think if I were wanting to do, what I would want to do is somehow if I were wanting to do this, I'd want to give it to you to sell on your Kickstarters.
So maybe that's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're the one that's going to be selling all these. I want my packet to be you to sell with my pack, you to be selling my packets and work out a deal that way.
So
that's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about it that way.
I don't know that this is it sounds well realized. I think your only hurdle is going to be convincing people that the concept is sound.
Yeah.
And I think the way that you can do this is, regrettably, throw a little shade at the Monstrous Compendium. You can use that as your springboard to talk about how this setup is different. I'm using better paper. It's smaller, it's more compact. These aren't going to wear out as much, literally show how you have put some thought into reutilizing that germ of a good idea that they botched, and introducing it in a different way. I think if you can do that and use that as your talking point, you'll at least you won't completely negate, but you'll mitigate the people who are going to take one look at that and go, it's Monstrous Compendium all over again. Pass.
It's the nightmare, right?
Yeah.
Well, what about this? Because I mean, you know that the DCC MCC community is pretty tight, and we see each other at a lot of different events and things like that. What about taking one or two of your sandbox set pieces, create a few covers, and give them to key people? Like, say, give one to Brandon LaSalle, give one to Curtis, give one to people that run them at con games, and just say, hey, can you run this at a con game? And let them play with it, and let them do it. And then when they go to GaryCon, when they go to Gamehole Con, and they're running a game, and they whip this out and flip it open and kind of go through and run the module that way, or run something that way, then other people are seeing it in use. And so it's almost like you're having not that they're social influencers, but you're actually letting people see how it works and see that proof of concept.
I mean, one thing you could do is I could provide a booklet at the beginning that has, you have the kind of the general variants, right? A, B, C, and everything. And literally the first 15 minutes is you have the players assemble that event, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to go through 7 rooms in this 4 hours, and each of you are going to roll a room, and I'm going to assemble it in front of you, and then we're going to play it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I've looked at all the rooms. I know what all the rooms are, right? But so that's not the issue. But we're going to create a unique, bespoke for this group experience that's randomized.
And you can even have it be in game. Have the sorcerer tell you, you'll choose your own fates. I'll not be a party to it. So draw, but draw carefully, because not all of the rooms are created equal. And then now you've got the drama,
You can have a Tomb of Horrors that you just mix in. Like, it's the you may get the Tomb of Horrors, or you may not.
Totally.
Not my fault as the DM. This is on you.
Hey, you did this. I'm just here to help.
I mean, it would be easy enough for me to get some prototypes built that are production level quality, and then take them to cons with a team and have them run them, and then photograph that, use that as a discussion point, as a blog and things like that, to get the word out so people can see.
Well, you'd also get feedback too if you need to change things.
Yeah. So
essentially you're play testing.
Yeah.
So that's all you're doing. Yeah.
And I know that you've got the awesome antique setup there for printing stuff, which I still want to see and play with sometime. But
absolutely,
so you've got the ability to put something like that together, I think. And so
that's it. So that's a use of these tools that I have, and everything. And I literally have the production level equipment to sit there and assemble 1,000 binders in a couple of days. Right.
Wow,
that's not hard. Right.
So his setup is awesome. I've seen pictures online, but it's easy.
Right? Yeah. And so Mark, I guess maybe so I purchased when I started gaming. Let me go back. Let me sum up. When I my plan originally was to do this in retirement in like 10 years, and then I discovered that I was retiring earlier than I thought, and so I had already put out the first couple issues of Tales of the Smoking Worm, and I was looking for a way to make that more complete. I really wanted to own the means of production. I've published many things in my years and never had the full ownership of everything and stuff. And that is frustrating on multiple levels. That's all I'm going to say on that. And so this was a desire to control the aspects of everything that I put together. So, you know, at some level, maybe that's an OCD problem. But what I did was I was looking for one piece of equipment, and I happened on a retired bookbinder who had all of his equipment, and he was like, "I'm willing to sell it cheap just to get it out of the house because it's been sitting here for 20 years and it's doing nothing. And I really want." This was the story. I've never told anybody this. He's like, "I really want my 3-season back porch to no longer be the graveyard of bookbinding equipment that it is. I'd really like to have my exercise equipment out." that he had like tucked in a corner because he couldn't get it out because we had all these 150-year-old antique cast iron board shears and guillotines and
come on.
so I had all this. Yeah, I have it all, right? I mean, literally all of it. You know, like you know those air hockey games, right? I have an air hockey table, a bookbinding table, where you run it through a little machine to glue the back of something, slap down the pieces, and it literally has this automated folding system, like I said, to build binders and everything in just seconds. And it's 100 years old. So I have all this equipment that needs to be refurbished because it hasn't been used in 20 years. But it's all in great shape, and it's all cast iron, and it's never going to go bad, right? And so
it needs to be used,
and it needs to be used.
It needs to be used.
The stuff is beautiful, and so I bought the collection, and I have it in a little shop down about a mile from my house, and I'm slowly refurbishing it. So here, I've been working on these actually just this week. So these are little foiled sleeves that go in the back of my book, of my first two essentially adventure modules,
like library card holders.
They're exactly like library card holders.
Yeah.
But if you price these out, you know that like a couple hundred of these are $700.
That's
right,
yeah.
right, for less than a nickel's worth of paper.
Oh my gosh!
If you have the equipment and you know how to assemble it by hand, you can assemble them in many different ways. And so here's the second one. This one's for Hangman's Garden. It's in this cool Vulcan green with a blue foil on it. And so, you know, so I have all this equipment. It really needs to be used and refurbished, and why not, right?
Yeah.
It's like you should do this. So I bought all the equipment, and so now I'm just looking for creative ways to use it.
Yeah.
And it gives me the full idea. So these were meant to hold, you know, tarot-sized cards in the back of adventures, so that you literally, the art is all designed to show players. Here's your adversary. Here's your adversary. Here's your adversary, right? You can pass those around, and I don't have to like hold the book up and say, "Don't look at this map." And here's the thing, but you can see that here's the monster. I know that it says the picture is you fighting a dragon, but you don't have to fight it. I'm just telling you, right?
I love monster flashcards. Always have. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, this is a way to integrate those into the booklets and stuff.
Beautiful.
And everything. So this has led me down this quest of building my own material and literally owning all the means of production, except paper production.
That's a little toxic.
Not only is it toxic, but it's seriously time consuming.
I honestly think, Trevor, honestly, your only real hurdle here, and from the sounds of it, you know, you've got such a great angle. I mean, you know, in terms of video, showing these things at work, all that stuff. Your only angle, your only impediment is going to be getting over the other people our age who remember what a cluster the Monstrous Compendium thing was.
Yeah.
You know, and as long as you start whatever campaign you're going to run with that, you know, who remembers these, you know,
right.
Let me show you how to fix it.
Yeah. Let me show you.
Like,
the idea is
like
solid, but the execution was warped. Here's how I fixed it. Yeah. And then you can go into that. I think as long as you start that way, then go, and this is suitable for all of the DCC line of quality products. You know, boink, you fished them in, you got them, you know, that's it.
What were you going to say, Tim?
I was just gonna say, just like earlier when we were talking about every WotC product that, you know, immediately comes out with, okay, here's how you fix this or this. Not that this was a WotC thing, you know, the Monsters Compendium, but hey, it's that people are already used to that. So
Yeah.
just, hey, I have fixed this problem. Granted, it's only taken 40 years.
40 years. But it's fixed.
That's the joke. I finally got the cast iron equipment necessary.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's what
it was worth the wait.
The problem I have was the format question, but also then, do you think that people would buy into the idea of literally hand assembling their unique take on a module?
Yes.
If I give them, because to me that was always the replayability is a huge aspect, and a saddle stitch binder, bound module has a problem with that.
Right. I bought 2 copies of the Lankmar setting so that I could tear up one of the geomorph books to make geomorphs that fit on the Lankmar map. So, but yeah, anytime you have people have a chance to customize at that level, I think is a good thing. Even if you're, no matter what kind of game master you are, that replayability or that that degree of customization, is going to be the real sexy thing there. Yeah.
And the thing is, what you're creating is a methodology, not necessarily hey, this is a system dependent thing. Like, once you've done this proof of concept and you've run it through with DCC, MCC, Lankmar, right, through that whole realm, you can turn around and sandbox, 5e. You can sandbox Swords of Wizardry. You can sandbox, just about any system that's out there, as long as you're able, it's system neutral. Do it basic fantasy even, so it's Travelers, to keep Jeff happy. You can go through and kind of sandbox this and use that same methodology later on, so it can expand even further.
Right. And again, you can add extra modules, a module, like, here's another 60 pages, here's another set of variants, right?
Yes.
And maybe it's not even every variant. Maybe it's like, here's, rooms 3 and 4, and I've got 4 extra versions of them. So you could have little small projects, you could have bigger projects, the mix and match potential there is kind of,
it's like the kids' books where they had where you could flip it and had the face, and as you flipped it, the Growing Kindredly had somewhere it would be a different top and an old face, a different hat, and
I still love that stuff. Yeah.
Is there a way? Because what I'm trying to think of is this: how many of us have bought modules and bought other things that I just literally want to photocopy that stuff and stick it in there as well? Because if that's my go-to way of running a campaign now, or running a game, I'm going to want to take, hey, I spent this money on these modules, I want to try and get this information into that same type of thing. So you might want to consider size-wise as well, or helping people to take stuff that they've already invested money in hard copies of or PDF copies of, and this is how you would print it out, or this is how you'd copy it to get it to fit in that same modular system. Yeah, that's an interesting nut to crack. I'd have to think more about that. It's an idea. Definitely I could pursue it. No, I like that. So anyway, that was my conundrum. It's a big project. The idea is to run Tales from the Smoking Worm 4 times a year and have kind of 2 or 3 of these big projects as well. And with my time allocations as it is, it's eminently doable to get at least one of those big projects out. Next year will definitely be House of the Petrified Frog, which will be a very different product because it was designed to be a different product. But so anyway, thanks guys.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Well, I really appreciate the insight. Especially, it's always good to hear other people hear from other people who have similar but different objectives, and just kind of being able to get your head out of your own mess and think about somebody else's really helps open up other ideas. So this was really this was really useful, and I really appreciate you guys weighing in. And Jeff, thanks for thinking to host this. This was a really smart idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed like these are all different things we're all dealing with, and I came thinking I didn't really have anything because but I realized I think the conundrum I have is inventory and some sort of strategy regarding POD, carrying inventory, price points and strategies, but I think that'll be for another time.
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on that, because one of the things that I'm dealing with is the Smoking Worm standard editions. How many of those do I stock at a time? Right.
Yes.
When I go to reprint that, because those aren't something that I'm printing currently myself. I'm actually, sending them out to Mixam and getting
Or just cut over to print on demand.
No, I had print on demand for the first 3 issues, and I hate the square bound format in that small of a product space.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It doesn't lay flat. It doesn't do the things I want it to do. And I'm not real happy with the quality papers that I'm finding. I mean, you could go with higher quality paper,
right? But I mean, those are all different things that could be weighed. Yes, I've got some thoughts along those lines.
And those are all things that I mean. So actually, having an episode where you talk about, here's the problem. Here's the different things I have to think about to try and solve that problem.
Yes.
Yeah, so, that'd be a great episode.
So that'll be coming in the future. But thank you, gentlemen. For your input.
Thanks, guys.
Time.
Yep.
And
it was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks. Appreciate it. It's good talking to you guys.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to see you, Tim. Nice to meet you, Mark.
A pleasure.